We all have a favorite movie franchise. For some it's James Bond, for others it's Jurassic Park, and some people even love the MCU. All of these franchises made billions of dollars, but which one made the most? Let's find out, starting in the 1980s.
My name is Bond. James Bond.
It's crazy to think that James Bond has been around since the 1960s. It's not just a spy movie franchise, it created the entire genre. The most incredible part about this is how it pioneered movie merchandising. Toys, clothes and gadgets based on movies were obviously not new at the time, but none did it like James Bond did. Ever since the early 60s, 007 wasn't just a character, it was a whole brand. By the mid-60s, you could find anything branded 007, whether it be clothes, cars, cologne, or even toys. The movie's producers didn't stop there though, because ever since Goldfinger in 1964, they started releasing the theme songs for the movies as separate singles on the radio. These also became massive hits, helping the popularity of the franchise even more. As people started seeing more 007 themed things everywhere, every consecutive movie became an even bigger spectacle than the last. And everyone wanted tickets. James Bond's success created many copycats using the same template to promote their own movies. But it wasn't until the late 70s when a different franchise slowly started catching up. And in 1983, Star Wars overtook James Bond.
He told me you killed him.
No. I am your father.
Many people consider the original Star Wars trilogy some of the best cinema ever made. But before it was released, Fox, the studio behind it, had very low expectations for it. Star Wars A New Hope was given a pretty modest budget at the time of only around $11 million. But as we know today, it ended up shattering box office records, overtaking even The Godfather as the highest grossing movie of its time. While the next two movies in the trilogy actually ended up making less money than the first one, the trilogy still managed to gross a combined $1.8 billion in total. One thing that Star Wars did that was pretty unheard of before was ending the second movie in a cliffhanger. Up to that point, movies were always self-contained stories, even if they were parts of a franchise. Sure, some franchises had overarching plots, but none would dare to end on a cliffhanger. And the biggest winner of this story was George Lucas himself, as he retained the right to create and sell Star Wars branded merchandise. While Star Wars' rise to the top was phenomenal, it wouldn't last forever. Just 2 years later, in 1985, James Bond would take back the top spot after the release of A View to Kill. In the 80s, a new James Bond movie was released every 2 years, and so through sheer quantity, they would easily stay on top of this list. While the first two positions were pretty much set in stone, let's talk about the third highest grossing franchise at the time, Indiana Jones. In the 80s and 90s, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas were constantly interchanging who directed the highest grossing film of its time. But while they did have a bitter rivalry, they were still friends and sometimes even still collaborated on movies. One of these came to be after Steven Spielberg tried to direct a James Bond flick, but he was instead pitched a story about an archaeologist adventurer by George Lucas. This led to Raiders of the Lost Ark, the very first Indiana Jones movie ever made. As we all know, it was a massive success. It ended up making more than $389 million in the box office. But it didn't end there, as a whole trilogy was made. After the release of The Last Crusade in 1989, the Indiana Jones franchise managed to make more than $1.2 billion in the box office. The success of these movies sparked new interest into archaeology and treasure hunting. And from it, a lot of other masterpieces like Tomb Raider and Temple Run came to be. At this point in time, all the top franchises on this list were truly genre-defining. And soon, a new genre-defining franchise would join them. It would even surpass Indiana Jones as the third highest grossing franchise of its time. I'm talking about Jurassic Park. After the massive success of Indiana Jones, Steven Spielberg wanted to see how much further he could push his career. So he hired the same effects company that worked on Indiana Jones and started a new project. An adventure film with living dinosaurs. With the help of a huge budget, an excellent team, and more realistic computer graphics, Jurassic Park was born, and just add a tinge of that Steven Spielberg magic to it, and all of a sudden it overtook E.T. as the highest grossing movie of that time. The next two movies in the trilogy, while not as popular, still made about $1 billion combined as well. All the while this was happening, James Bond and Star Wars were continuously releasing new movies. By 2001, they both had more than a $1.5 billion lead over Jurassic Park. But in 2002, a different franchise would quickly join the top three and close that gap. I'm talking about Lord of the Rings.
Precious!
I don't think it's a stretch to say that The Lord of the Rings is the most beloved film franchise in the world. All three films in the trilogy were filmed as if it was one mega project within a little over a year in New Zealand. And the reason why they're so popular is quite simple. The actors were great, the directing was fantastic, the set designs really transported you into a different world, but most importantly, they respected J.R.R. Tolkien's work. A trilogy of novels that was already considered the world's finest work in high fantasy. There are many other reasons why these movies are truly fantastic, from the great practical effects to make the hobbits look small, to the incredible CGI for its time, all the way to the unforgettable performances by the main cast. Watching The Lord of the Rings truly feels like you're going on an adventure. The third and final movie, The Return of the King, even managed to receive 11 different Oscars in 2004, tying it with Titanic and Ben-Hur as the most awarded movie ever made. The Lord of the Rings trilogy ended up grossing just shy of $3 billion combined, and it set the new standard for high fantasy movies. Soon, a different fantasy franchise would overtake its position in the list though. I'm talking about Harry Potter.
You're a wizard, Harry.
I'm a what?
While it was initially competing for the third place spot on this list, as more movies were released in the franchise, Harry Potter quickly shot to the top. By 2007, it overtook both Star Wars and James Bond as the highest grossing movie franchise of its time. And the way the franchise did it is actually quite interesting. The first Harry Potter movie primarily targeted kids. It showed a magical world with interesting characters, fascinating spells, and a plot centered around school life. It was a very enjoyable movie for families to watch together. And so what would otherwise have been a single ticket sale quickly turned into 4 or 5 tickets per family. But it didn't stop there, because just like the audience, with every consecutive movie the characters aged. And as they did, the plot also turned more and more mature. This way, kids who watched since the first movie could remain hooked all the way through, as the plot was unveiling into an overarching, beautiful hero's journey. These movies truly made bank, as each individual release almost grossed $1 billion by itself. As the final Harry Potter movie released, the franchise made more than $7.8 billion in the box office. That is more than a $2.5 billion lead over James Bond, the number 2 position at the time. But around that same time, a different movie franchise was slowly crawling up the list and looking to stir things up. I'm talking about the MCU.
And I will not be bullied by that.
Superhero movies have always been really popular. Looking at this list, you can see that X-Men, Spider-Man and Batman were already represented. And while these franchises were extremely popular, none of them even got close to the popularity of the MCU. Iron Man 2 was the very first time that big-budget superhero movies started to become intertwined. It wasn't just standalone movies anymore, now it was an entire movie universe. Every single property in the Marvel universe would tie into each other. You would always get a teaser for a different movie at the end, and it really does feel like you're watching an entire universe unfold. With the massive budget that Disney's acquisition brought to the franchise, the MCU was able to churn out movie after movie, garnering huge profits. especially in the early 2010s when it was all still a pretty new concept. Marvel actually got so far ahead of every other franchise on this list, we decided to even separate the Avengers movies as a separate franchise to have a better comparison with its competitors. The MCU isn't just big, it is unimaginably massive. It is bigger than any other movie franchise before it. Not a single one even comes close to it. While the MCU remains on top, let's go through a quick speed round before we discuss another franchise that might soon overtake it.
Bilbo Baggins. I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
From 2012 to 2014, the Hobbit trilogy released. While it's not as popular as the Lord of the Rings trilogy, it still made a whole $2.9 billion in the box office. This brings the franchise up to almost $6 billion in total. The reason why it didn't make any more money is quite simple. The producers thought it would be a smart idea to milk the book it's based on as much as possible, so out of a single book they made 3 movies. This resulted in a dragging and slow plot that many people lost interest in.
For sure! What?
Disney acquired Lucasfilm in 2012, and then from 2015 to 2019 they released a whopping 5 new Star Wars movies. This includes a mainline trilogy and 2 standalone movies. While most of the old Star Wars fans really hate these new films, they still ended up watching them because they grossed a whole $6.7 billion in the box office. In other words, they really made bank.
Really?
These were not the only franchises to release new movies, because the same thing happened with the Harry Potter series, or more accurately, their prequel series called Fantastic Beasts. While the original plan was to make it a 5-part series, Warner Bros. Ended up shelving the project after a trilogy spanning from 2016 all the way to 2022. This trilogy only ended up making $1.8 billion. These are definitely massive numbers, but they're not quite what the series needed to get back on top.
Time to unleash the beast.
Another franchise that would land quite high on this list is the Fast and Furious series. Vin Diesel and his family are some of the most consistent characters on our cinema screens. The series has been running since all the way back in 2001, and their latest movie has been released in 2023. There have been a total of 11 movies in the franchise, and while individually none of them were a super high grossing movie, their sheer consistency combined with an ever escalating plot and the fact that they purposefully film in 2 to 3 different cities for every movie in order to attract a more global audience landed them the 5th place spot on this list. They ended up grossing a total of $7.3 billion in the box office. Alright, now back to today. In 2025, the MCU still clearly reigns on top, and while it looks like Star Wars is trying to catch up, they're still nowhere near them. But a different franchise that is currently still at the bottom of this list might soon become a serious competitor. I'm talking about Avatar, because with just 2 movies, one of them released in 2009, they already gross over $5 billion. So far, their movies have consistently been among the highest grossing movies ever made, and the plan is to release a whole 5 movies in the franchise. And as we know Hollywood, they're most definitely not going to stop at 5 if it is successful, with prequels and spin-offs popping up left and right. For now, the Avatar franchise is still small compared to the others on this list, but how long is that going to remain true? And will it be able to overtake Marvel? All we can do is guess, so instead how about we just sit back, relax and enjoy the show.